Hi friends, welcome to Morning Albums. Today we're going to talk about all the albums I picked up in October 2022. Hey everyone, Kyle here. So October was a pretty great month for me music-wise. I picked up a lot of great records and albums. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first album I picked up is Dialect, and this is Advanced Myth. It has a really beautiful abstract album cover, and the back cover is very pretty as well. And it came on clear vinyl in a static-free sleeve, which is always appreciated. And this album I saw a post on Instagram from an artist I like, and they shared this album. I had never heard it before. It came out in 2015, and they recently reissued it. And it's by British composer / musician Andrew P.M. Hunt. The Bandcamp page describes this as enchanted exploration of unusual sound synthesis, electroacoustic arrangements, and found sound. And I think that's a really great description of this album. It's very lush. It uses a lot of acoustic instruments as well as synthesizers and samples. It could be peaceful at time and calming, but also a little bit chaotic and unpredictable with uses of distortion, but in a very beautiful way. There are passages of almost like piano noodling, but then in the background there's these field recordings of I don't know if it's gates rattling, but there's like rattling background noises, kind of unsettling, but very beautiful. And there's songs like Chroma that have a very wonderful hand clapping rhythm going on alongside horns playing a really nice melody. So beautiful stuff, kind of sound collage-y, a little ambient, maybe a little new age influenced, but great record. I'm so glad I picked this up, and I guess I can't really say this is one of my top records of 2022 because, it wasn't released in 2022 originally, but definitely one of my favorite reissues. So great purchase. So the next record I picked up is by Stan Getz and Eddie Sauter. I think that's how you pronounce it. And it's called Focus, and it was released in 1962. I found this at a record store that I don't usually go to. It was about an hour away from us. And it was a cool record store. It was a little smaller than my normal record shop, but it had a lot of good jazz. And I just wanted to get something to kind of, I like to get something to just establish the memory of the day. And it was a wonderful day with me and my fiance, so I picked this up. I've never heard this before. I'm familiar with Stan Getz's work, the album Jazz Samba, and his collaboration with Gilberto. So I'm looking forward to listening to this. I'm expecting sort of a bossa nova jazz samba sound, but I don't really know. The cover kind of looks a little more nocturnal to me, so maybe it's a different vibe completely. The album description I saw was described as cool jazz and third stream, which I'm really excited about diving into this, and I've been trying to get more and more into jazz. This, of course, is on the it looks to be on the Verb record label, which put out a lot of great jazz music at the time. So definitely looking forward to getting into this one. Now, a few weeks back, I found one of my favorite albums in my local record store. I've been looking for this one in the wild for a while now, and I haven't come across it. This is T-Rex, and this is The Slider. One of my faves. This is released in 1972. It's sort of a glam rock, hard rock, psych art pop release. I don't know if I'm describing that correctly, but it's great. If you're into artists like Bowie, this shouldn't be too far off from that. Very playful with cool riffs at times. Kind of almost like party music. I feel like if you threw this on at a party when you were in college or something, people could get into this. But it features awesome songwriting by Mark Bolan. And with those great riffs, there's a lot of group background vocals with just oohs and ahs, and it just makes the record sound really big and awesome. But there are also times when they pull it back a little bit, like on the song Mystic Lady. They get a little more acoustic and showcase Mark Bolan's songwriting abilities. And you just get lost in Bolan's world of just abstract lyrics, just far out sounds. Some of the lyrics are wonderful, like in Mystic Lady. Pleasant crescent moon fills my heart with pain, fills my toes with rain. Just beautiful abstract. I love when songwriters use this style. And, I appreciate a good storyteller like a Dylan or a John Prine. But then I also love stuff like this that's a little more out there. There's another song called Spaceball Ricochet. I'm just going to read this passage because I found it beautiful. I'm just a man. I understand the wind and all the things that make the children cry. With my Les Paul, I know I'm small, but I enjoy living anyway. Book after book, I get hooked every time the writer talks to me like a friend. Just great songwriting. And, you know, T-Rex is one of those bands from the 70s that I know music lovers talk a lot about them, but your casual music listening fan might not know them from your Zeppelins and your Sabbaths. And it's a shame because they're just such a great band. There's this album and then Electric Warrior, which are two great albums. I think I like this one a little bit better, and I think a lot of people prefer Electric Warrior, but I don't know, there's just something about this. This song has no skips for me. Every song is just so great. One of my favorites of all time, and I'm just so glad I came across it in the record store. I'm going to be spinning this forever, and it's just a treasure to me. So that's kind of the end of my vinyl pickups for the month. I picked up a lot of CDs as well. The first one I got is a 5-album collection of Françoise Hardy. Françoise is, of course, a French pop artist who was kind of at the forefront of the yee movement. It's a type of songwriting, very playful, a lot of female French pop singers with kind of, the style of rock music, a little more pop-oriented, though, at the time. Very playful, just wonderful songs, wonderful music. But then later in her career, the direction kind of shifted, a little more mature songwriting on the album La Question, which I believe is kind of considered a turning point for her. This album features a little more acoustic instrumentation backed by string arrangements, just a little more singer-songwriter. She flexes her songwriting chops a little more on that album. I'm not like super familiar with all the records. I think I've only heard La Question and maybe one of the two or the others on here, but just great stuff. I have another one on vinyl. She had a popular song in the Wes Anderson film Moonrise Kingdom. There's a really great scene where the two main children characters are dancing to one of her songs by a campsite, and it's pretty memorable. So just a cool pickup. I'm glad that this has some albums that I've never heard before, and it's, it was like $14 for 5 albums. So I feel like this is a good investment, and then I'm going to get a lot of good listening out of this. So a few weeks back, my fiance and I went to what was billed as a punk rock flea market in a neighboring town. They held it on the grounds of a drive-in movie theater. So it was just in a big field, and there was a lot of different vendors set up, and there was record stores, artwork. The artist I get tattooed from was there. Shout out to Isabel at Sauter. And also my local record store had a booth there, but I didn't really stop by that one. I checked out some of the more independent folks that were selling albums and CDs. So I came across this one booth, and they were selling CDs for $5 a pop. So I got these 3 for $15 total. And the first one is Tom Waits' Rain Dogs. I don't think I've ever heard this one. I might have maybe once before. I'm more familiar with Tom Waits' debut album, and I really have a soft spot for the album Alice, which I heard back when I was in college. So I'm looking forward to checking this one out. I don't really know too much, but people always talk about Tom Waits, and very prolific, very celebrated songwriter. So I'm looking forward to diving in a little bit more. And then I got Miles Davis, Kind of Blue. Don't really need to go too much into this one. Just a classic cool jazz album that features John Coltrane on it and Cannonball Adderley. So definitely looking forward to listening to this a bit more, and I'm happy that I have a physical copy. And then I got Black Sabbath Mob Rules. Now, I used to be just a straight up Ozzy Sabbath fan, and recently I've delved into more of the Dio stuff, and I found that I like it a lot. I don't know why I had a hesitation against it. To me, Sabbath was always with Ozzy, but there's some good stuff here. This is the second album with Dio after Heaven and Hell, I believe, and it's got some great riffs. Dio is just a phenomenal performer and vocalist. I have fallen in love with the 90s album when Black Sabbath got back with Dio. It's called Dehumanizer. I've yet to see it in the wild, but when I do, I'm picking it up first thing. And I had no idea that album existed. And I listened to it. A buddy of mine, we discovered it together, and we always talk about how much it rules. So I'm looking forward to finding that one day. But, this is a great one as well. Great riffs, great vocal performances. You get the metal kind of lyrical themes that Dio provides. Just a cool release. And, these 3 albums for $15 was a score. The gentleman that I purchased it from commented and said, I think verbatim, that's a lot of culture for $15. And I couldn't agree more. This is a great pickup, and I'm glad to be adding more to my CD collection. And then I picked up Taylor Swift's Midnights. Had to do it. I got the dark green version. Obviously, there's been a lot of news about the different variants, but cool packaging. I love the kind of the old, it's kind of a throwback album cover style with all the song titles listed on the front. The album is honestly not my favorite Taylor album. I really liked Folklore and Evermore, produced by Jack Antonoff and Aaron Dessner of The National. I thought the combination of her with those producers just produced some magic, and the style was more my thing, and I think really showcased her songwriting chops. This is good. It's produced by Jack Antonoff, and it goes in a different direction than I expected. I said in another video that I thought it was going to be more of a 70s rock sound, but it's a lot more contemporary, a lot more electronic synth beats, a little minimalist at times, but some cool songwriting and memorable moments and lyrics as you would come to expect with a Taylor Swift release. I mean, you have to admit she creates some wonderful, memorable moments, like on Anti-Hero. That chorus has been in my head since I heard it. It's me high on the problem, it's me, as you've probably seen making the rounds on social media memes. But a cool effort. I like this probably more than Lover and Reputation, but below Folklore and Evermore, and even albums like Red in 1989. But I don't regret this purchase at all. I think it's a decent, cohesive album, and Taylor explores some different sounds, and I always appreciate that. And I'm always willing to give Taylor a shot, because I at the end of the day, I really do think she's a good songwriter, and has some cool ideas and tries different things. So no regrets. I'm starting to realize how much money I spent on music in October. Oh no. So next we have, I don't want to talk out of school here, but I think this is going to be my number 1 favorite album of 2022. This is Pigments by Dawn Richard and Spencer Zahn. And this is just a beautiful ECM style jazz influenced album. If you're not familiar with ECM style jazz, it's jazz, but it incorporates classical music elements as well as ambient, a little laid back, can be a little experimental at times. And it just so happens that I've been into ECM style jazz for a little while now with artists like Pat Metheny, Eberhard Weber. Is that how you pronounce it? I'm sorry if I'm messing that up. But yeah, it's a style of music I've been really getting into lately. And I also am a big fan of Dawn Richard. Since going back a few years now, I've liked a lot of her releases. So this is just a treat for me. So this features those jazz and classical music elements, with Zahn composing the instrumentals, and they play upright bass, piano, vibraphone, and synthesizers. And you have this really neat juxtaposition with this, kind of this really organic music with clarinets and strings and saxes and flutes, but then you have that mixed with Dawn's heavily processed vocals, and the result is just really cool. And Dawn has some really interesting lyrics. I love the song Sandstone, which she says, "Dreamer, I want to love like you. I want to see the world through your eyes. If I could be more through you, I want to be more through you." Just really lovely lyrics that Dawn penned, and her vocal delivery. I always enjoy her vocal delivery going back to other projects. And I think I just appreciate Dawn so much because she always takes these chances and does different things outside the norm. And I believe she came up in one of those Making the Band with P. Diddy. I think it was Danity Kane was the band. But to see her trajectory has just been fascinating as sort of just a mainstream looking to be a mainstream pop artist to producing this kind of music. I love it so much, and I can't say enough great things about this album. The whole thing kind of works. Each song transitions into the next one so well that it feels like one steady piece of music, in a kind of what you would think with classical music with different movements. It's just a beautiful album, and I'm so happy I picked this up. It also just came with beautiful packaging. We have a poster here, and then it came with postcards as well, and just awesome, just great stuff. I love when artists do things like this. It just makes, as a consumer, it makes you feel so much better about spending your hard-earned money on music, and when they give you such a complete product. So shout out to Dawn and Spencer. I love this project. Like I said, I think it might be my top project of the year. I don't want to speak too soon, but it's looking that way. And just one last thing before I wrap up. Dawn, another cool thing about this album is Dawn doesn't seem to feel like she has to sing on every song, and in doing so, she leaves room for these beautiful instrumentals to breathe, and then when she comes back in, it's so much more powerful. It's just a great project, and yeah, I can't say enough good things. And the last CD I picked up was A Softer Focus by Claire Rousay. I've talked about Claire on this channel before. She's a great sound collage experimental artist, puts together these sound collages out of, field recordings and guitar and synthesizers and all these other instruments, and they just work so well. This was one of my favorite albums of 2021, and it can be very ambient, very droney, but has that musique concrète. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. That musique concrète style of field recordings, but also loops in those instruments to make it very meditative, very textural, just wonderful. And you feel at times like you're with her in the kitchen, or with her in, maybe her at her desk or her working space, or going through a market or in her apartment. It's just really cool the way she ties in these field recordings and these instrumentals to compose really complete, thoughtful work. And I love it so much. I've been interested in all her projects since I heard this one, and I'll continue to pay attention to whatever she does. And the last album I picked up was on cassette, and this is Every Flower in My Garden by Lilien Rosarian. Now, I thought this was just a person, but I think this is just a stage name or something like that, because the album is credited toward Amy Abel and Corey Abel, and it's just a really cool project. It's kind of like Claire Rousay, sound collage-y, but they use a lot of cassette tapes and sort of sample those cassette tapes over and over, and the result is a really glitchy, interesting project, very lush. It could be really noisy and hazy at times, but then also really peaceful and beautiful at other times. And there's just something about working with cassette tape that evokes such nostalgia. I've found it with, obviously, artists like Boards of Canada that use a lot of tape. And, there's a bunch of other artists in the ambient genre that use similar tactics. And it just always gets something out of me. It just always reminds me of childhood, and I just feel like the music is so beautiful. Obviously, it's all in your technique and how you use it, but artists that effectively use it are able to draw out such emotion in me, and I really appreciate it and admire it. And I've tried to do it myself. I've written music in the past, mainly guitar-based music, but I got interested in experimenting with cassette tape, and it's really hard. It's hard to make the loops, and it's hard to come up with cohesive ideas that mesh together, and it takes a lot of talent and skill. And Amy and Corey just put together a great project here. The cassette itself is really cool. It's on this beautiful bright blue. One side is bright blue, and it's got this beautiful flower design on it, and then the other side is pink. So it's sort of a half and half. Really beautiful stuff. And then Amy took some time to write me a note within the packaging, which I really appreciated. It's a really lovely touch. So thank you, Amy. And I really love this project. So that's all the albums I picked up in October. And geez, it's really hitting me now about how much money I spent. But, no regrets. I'm looking forward to listening to all this music. I've listened to a lot of it already, and I got some great pickups. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please hit the subscribe button, and comment if you picked up anything you liked or that you're really stoked on in October. I'd love to hear, and I'd love to talk more about it. Follow me on Instagram at Morning Elms, where I post more shorter form videos of my album and record collection. And thank you for stopping by. I've been really enjoying this journey of making videos and connecting with people online. You know, I used to make little movies when I was a kid, just little funny movies with my friends, and we used to edit it in different video editing software in the early 2000s. And I always loved it. And I don't know, when I was a kid, I had imagined doing that for a living, and somewhere I lost the passion. And it just felt so good to download a video editing software, and it felt very familiar to me. Obviously, I had to look up some tutorials on how to do this, but I'm learning again, and things are really familiar for me. And it's just, I didn't realize how much I missed it. So thanks for stopping by. I hope you have a great day, and take care.